Hello, friends. We're back for another gab session with me and Sabrina, our amazing podcast producer for Cubicle the CEO. And this is a highly requested topic. You all want to know how I bought a second business, what that process was like, and all the things in between. And so we thought, let's sit down for a full Q&A on this. So Sabrina's going to help me out by facilitating the question asking. We had some listener submitted questions along with questions that she came up with. So very excited to dig into this topic. Just as a bit of context, if you're like just hitting play on this and you're like, what, Ellen, you have another business? Or like, what are you talking about? I, alongside my husband in February, bought Runway Fashion Exchange. It's a clothing resale store in Corvallis, Oregon, which is where I grew up and also where I went to college. So again, I won't get super into the details because I'm sure we'll cover some of that in the conversation, but this is a brick and mortar main street style business. So obviously very different than anything I'm doing online here with my media company with Cubicle the CEO. So it's definitely been quite an adventure and I'm excited to share a glimpse into that journey. So Sabrina, welcome back and take it away.
Yay, thank you. I'm excited that I get to be a part of this episode in specific because I also went to Oregon State in Corvallis, so I literally know the exact physical location that you're talking about. And for anyone listening to, like when Ellen was teasing, oh, I bought a second business, what could it be? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm at a loss. So when you said it was Runway, I was like, oh my gosh, wait, that is so awesome and so fun. So yes, very excited to get into all of it today.
Real quick, actually, I just have to tell you a funny story about that. I do remember, so I posted this photo of a selfie of me in a mirror, and I had purposely cropped it out so there was no like identifying sign. So it was literally just like my face in a very generic looking mirror. And I was like, any guesses as to, what the business is? So what you were referencing, Sabrina. And I remember so many people actually guessed that I was starting a fashion line. I was wearing this like cute little floral zippa hoodie, and that, I mean, I thank you all for your belief in my artistic abilities, but that guess made me laugh so hard because I was like, I do not even know how I would begin to design a fashion line. So I was like, thank you for your belief in me. Close, but not quite there. So anyways, that was just a funny
Almost,
aside.
almost.
Almost there, yeah.
Well, honestly, I feel like we should just start at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious, what made you decide that you were interested in buying a second business? Specifically, I guess, just like why buy another one? And then also why something that's so deviated away from the business that you currently run and operate?
Yeah. So, like a lot of you listening in who have been exposed to this idea of buying an existing business, I first learned about it through Cody Sanchez, who's actually a past podcast guest of ours. So, if you're curious, we'll link her episode, her case study interview below. She, I mean, is probably the most well-known media personality who talks about this topic. And I was intrigued. So I think I first discovered her content maybe in like 2021, 2022. And, I bought her book, Main Street Millionaire, and I just thought this concept of buying an existing small business was really intriguing to me. But I didn't necessarily know, like for our family, for me and my husband, like what that second business could look like. And we also didn't have like a specific timeline. We weren't like, oh, within X number of years, we want to be able to acquire a business. I just knew that sometime I wanted to do this thing. And it was kind of like up in the air on when or how that would look. And so I just kept absorbing more information about this. So I also discovered an amazing company called They Got Acquired, ran by Lexi Grant, and she covers companies that actually have successfully sold that are in that like lower to mid market, which is really anything, under, I don't know the exact number, but it's like typically companies that sell for like six figures or low seven figures, mid seven figures, things that like venture capital or private equity like don't really care about. It's not really covered about in normal Forbes business media or things of that nature. So I kept just like accumulating knowledge in this arena. And that's kind of how I approach a lot of things in life. I just like get hooked on this idea and I'm like, let me absorb everything I can about it. But of course, the best way to learn is to do. Like you have to get in the game. And so I just started, like, religiously looking at listings, like, the way some people scroll Zillow and, like, look at $1,000,000 homes every night. I am literally on Biz Buy Sell, like, every single night just looking at, like, what new business listings have come up, and we can talk about, like, where you can look at business listings and things like that, but that one's my favorite platform, and so one day I was just scrolling across and I saw that Runway was posted for sale, and I was so shocked because I haven't lived in my hometown for like 6 years now, so I'm not super plugged into the Corvallis business community, but I had no idea that this business was gonna be sold. This is a long-standing business, like, I had shopped there in college, you knew about it in college, so it had already been around for like 12-ish years, and so, I was really excited when I saw it, and I was like, "Okay," and I think for me, it was less about, like, trying to find a very specific type of business, it was more so I'm just such an instinct-led person that when something excites me, I follow that curiosity, and so I immediately called Dustin over and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, you won't believe it, like, one of my favorite stores from back in college is for sale," and Dustin actually has a background in retail, which, again, we can talk about more in depth in a bit, but he was instantly intrigued as well, so that's kind of, like, what drew us to Runway, and brick and mortar, that piece, I just love the game of entrepreneurship. So for me, I really think that for me to be a well-rounded business owner and a well-rounded entrepreneur, I really want to learn all the different facets of entrepreneurship. So like I want to learn digital online business and the creator world, right? Which is like the world I play in Cubicle, the CEO. I also want to learn Main Street business, brick and mortar, retail sales. I also wanna learn, like, more things about franchising. I wanna learn about tech companies. I wanna learn about consumer brands and e-com. Like, I try to really dip my hands in a wide variety of entrepreneurial endeavors, whether it's as an owner or whether it's as an angel investor or an advisor, because I really just like to, like, be a fly on the wall and soak up, like, all the different types of businesses because I think it makes me sharper as an entrepreneur in my main business. And so that's kind of I was gonna say long story short, but that was really the long story long. So
Well, and I'm glad that you kind of touched on all of those things because
Yeah.
as Ellen said too, we had listeners writing questions and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of those questions were answered, like why brick and mortar. A kind of tangent off of the brick and mortar question though was there any excitement or hesitation as far as this kind of business, like a consignment shop where maybe margins might be lower, especially than an online business is or would
Yeah,
have?
absolutely. Profit margins were definitely something we considered, of course, in our due diligence process. However, Dustin and I have actually had repeated conversations about this. We feel very fortunate actually to have the type of retail store that we do because most retail stores, right? And I'm not just talking about clothing, I'm talking about like literally any brick and mortar store that you walk into where they're selling items, right, at a markup from what they bought it in for. Most traditional retail stores do have thin margins, and it's also such a heavy logistics game because if you think about it, right, like a furniture store, for example, might be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory upfront, which is like cash or credit, that debt that you need to service upfront, and then it has to sit on their sales floor and they have to be able to time it correctly. And even with clothing, right? Like boutiques, like we're right next to a bunch of amazing boutiques. And every time I walk past, I'm in awe of their owners because I'm like, wow, you have to be so good. You have to spend so much time not only sourcing the clothing, right? Going to like shows and finding the right vendors to buy from, but you also have to like, it's literally like a logistical mine, right? You have to figure out, okay, how much of each sizing should I order? Like which sizing do I think is going to sell out quickly? Which colorways, if it comes in multiple colors, like it's just such a logistical to me, it sounds like a logistical nightmare. And so what I actually love about our business model is we don't go source the clothes. Like the clothes come straight to us from our community. We're truly part of like a circular economy because it's like we're buying clothes from our community, which puts money back into the hands of people in our community. And then people in our community buy the clothing at a discounted price from what they would pay new at retail. So it's a win for them. And then we, of course, also employ people who are local in our store through the profits that our store makes. So it really is like a really beautiful circular economy thing. But the clothes come straight to us. This is also another complicated thing I've learned in having like a product base or like in person business versus online. When I say profit margin in like a digital business doesn't really have COGS, right? COGS stands
Yeah.
for cost of goods sold. So it's like whatever you make in sales and revenue minus your expenses is your net profit. In a brick and mortar store, it's different because there's adjusted like gross profit and then there's net profit. So it's like whatever you make in sales minus your cost of goods. So, like what you paid to acquire the inventory is like your adjusted profit. So, that piece, that adjusted profit is a higher, I would say, profit margin than your typical retail store. But then after you include all of the other expenses like labor, insurance, utilities, lease, like, all the things that make a store run, that net margin then is definitely lower compared to what a digital business is capable of, but I
Mhm.
would still say is at least in the few months that we've operated it, it has been sustainable for us.
Love that. I know that we kind of touched on how you found the business and
Yeah.
how it came across your desk, but when you were looking at it and evaluating it as a potential buy, was it already a successful business, or when you went into it, did you know that it was gonna need a little bit of work that needed to be done to get it up to where it could be?
Great question. I'll answer that second part first, and then I'll kind of go back to like how did that process work once I discovered that it was for sale. This business, like I mentioned, has been around for over a decade. So it's definitely a long term sustainable business, right? It's not a startup. It wasn't super risky in that manner because it has been around for so long and has, maintained itself and been profitable. However, when we were, reviewing the numbers and everything, the store definitely has potential to do better. I think that is definitely clear. Like when we bought it, we weren't buying a store that was like at its absolute peak, like at its highest sales revenue it had ever experienced, at its highest profit it had ever experienced. So we could see the, fluctuations throughout the years. And obviously the pandemic played a role too for any retail store out there. And so it was cool to be able to look at the numbers and be like, oh, here's what they've been able to do in the past. Here's what's possible. Here's also what's possible for similar size of retail locations in this industry and how much more potential we have to grow. And so to answer your question, it wasn't a situation where it was like, "Oh, the store is, like, dying and, we're trying to save a dying store." Not like that, but again, was it at its optimal? No, I think we definitely bought it because and this is another thing to consider is that most business owners, when they're acquiring a business, buy a business that is stable, hopefully, and profitable, hopefully, but they buy it because there is still upside to be earned, right? It's rare, I think, that people are buying a business where it's already reached its full potential and there's really
Mm,
no additional upside or value that the new owners can bring.
gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you're scrolling your business Zillow and you see Runway Exchange come up, what did the process look like from that point of expressing interest and like doing your due diligence, figuring out the financials,
Yeah.
and also just another piece to add on to that? Was there like a certain threshold or a certain number or place that you'd want to be at with Cubicle to CEO, your original business, before deciding, okay, this is the next logical step or the next step that we can take?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I know there's a couple parts to that question, so please jump in if I forget to
Okay.
answer these because my brain goes off in little squirrel moments. But okay, so earlier I had said Biz by Sell is one of my favorite platforms to scroll listings on. That's a free website. You can literally it's bizbysell.com. You can go, you can filter by industry, you can filter by like sales price, you can filter by location. There's like a certain there's a certain like set of counties nearby to where I live where I will search for local listings. I will say Biz by Sell typically is a platform that is a better place to source in-person businesses like brick and mortar or just like local like something tied to like a specific location. If you are specifically looking to acquire an online business, I don't know that BizBuySell is probably the best platform for you to source that. There's a lot of open marketplaces like Flippa or Empire Builders. There's more out there too that you can look. Oh, also Cody Sanchez, like she has a platform. I think it's called Biz Scout, I want to say. Also a platform where you can view listings. So there's lots of places you can view listings. But honestly, some of the best deals that happen in this lower level market of mergers and acquisitions definitely happens behind closed doors between people's personal connections and networks. Like they'll hear about, okay, an example of this is
to hear the rest of this episode and unlock weekly subscriber-only content and community access, join us as a premium subscriber at cubicletoceo.co/podcast. The link is below in our show notes.